Thus, okay. Hello, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone. Welcome to Faculty of Design and Architecture to our respected speaker. So for today, are you guys ready for this for the sharing today? Yes. Can I hear some noise from you guys? Okay, so I say Aki, you say Putra. Arki, Arki. One last time, Arki. Thank you. So good morning to the head of department, Dr. Zaki, all the lecturers from the Department of Architecture, Faculty of Design and Architecture, and all the architecture students. So, I'm sure you guys know what is going to happen today. We are here for the next Azure sharing from our respected speaker. So before we start, I would like to share a short biography of him. So Dr. Tan Loke Moon's architecture is green and tropical. He's a prominent award-winning architect and is well regarded as a visionary and a bit of a maverick. With a career spanning more than 30 years, Dr. Tan's work are widely published and his practice is amongst the most awarded in the region. He is the recipient of the prestigious Kington Lu Gold Medal. Other significant architectural awards include the Asian Energy Award, Future Up Green Leadership Award, and numerous PAM and RECA awards. He has managed to juggle a prolific career as an architect, interior designer, and master planner, whilst at the same time contributing extensively to the profession. He was the president of the Malaysian Institute of Architects PAM from 2005 to 2007, team leader responsible for the setting up the Green Building Index GBI rating tool for Malaysia in 2009, and a long-standing member of the Board of Architects Malaysia LAM from 2003. He has successfully interpreted and translated tropical regional metaphors into his architecture master plans, the multi-award winning GBI Platinum rated S11 house in one of his biggest ideological success. So everyone, please join me to welcome our speaker, respected speaker, Architect Dr. Tan Loke Moon. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Testing 1 2. I have to tell you to press. Is it? Oh, sorry. I thought there was a remote. Good morning, everyone. Yeah. So good to see so many of you are here. Architecture, like I always tell people, is the best profession in the world. Okay, do you believe that? It's true. And those who join architecture to make money, you will definitely make money. You don't have to worry, okay? So by the time you are 50, you'll definitely be a millionaire. But I think it's always more than money. It's about the journey, and it's about making a better world. Thank you for the kind invitation from Mio and Doc for the invitation. I've entitled my talk I've got about 1 hour, so bear with me. I hope you won't fall asleep like in lectures. I've entitled my talk Next Asia. For many years, I spoke about a better tomorrow. I'm not so sure if there's going to be a better tomorrow, but I'm quite sure that there will be a next Asia. How many have seen this frog before? This is a very unique frog. It is only found in one place in the whole world, on the island of Borneo. Continent of Borneo is huge, okay? It was discovered by Alfred Russel Wallace, and it's named after him. It's known as the Wallace tree frog. Why I put it there is because he wrote a very seminal book. It was called The Malay Archipelago. The book came out at the same time as The Origin of Species came out. But Origin of Species, which introduced evolution as against the creation that was being pushed or believed at that time, it gained a lot of momentum. But this book, interestingly, is called The Malay Archipelago, was sort of forgotten for many years. But if you go to London, there is a whole museum dedicated to Russel Wallace. And in it, you can find this frog. Why I put the frog there is the frog is the most sensitive creature on the earth. When it dies and disappears, you know that we will be next. Because it's sensitive to water, it's sensitive to atmosphere, and it's green color, it can fly, okay? It can jump from one tree to another. It's a truly unique amphibian. Next. I believe that you already know this. 20 years ago, almost when I started Green Building Index, we actually came to know this term that we are 5 degrees from destruction. And what happens is now we are already 2.1 degrees. Once you hit 3 degrees, that means to the 5 degrees, once you hit the 3 degrees, it's gone past the tipping point. And for the Earth to turn it back down the 2.5 degrees that it goes up, or the 3 degrees, will take us like 20 to 50 years. So we are very close to that tipping point. And Prince Charles was one of the biggest advocates. Every time he used to speak up about it. But now that he's king, he's kept very quiet. Okay, Time magazine came out with this in April 2021, right in the middle of COVID. And it's by a Malaysian trained architect, Red Hong Yi. Why I put this image there is because architecture is an incredible course. Don't just think that it's architecture, okay? Don't just think that you are going to be doing buildings. Red Hong Yi went to China thinking she'll do buildings, but instead, today she's a well-recognized, well-celebrated international artist. So don't feel that you are narrowed down this tunnel. You can actually, architecture gives you an education to diversify. You could be an adventurer. You could be an environmentalist. You could be a person who discovers the next pyramids. You know, you could be all of that, and all because of your architecture training. Next. When we studied architecture, when I studied 40 years ago, we were always told that tropical weather, tropical climate is hot and humid. Today, because of climate change, I have added one other word there. It is no longer just hot and humid. It is, for some reason, extremely wet. And climate change has totally changed the way the world is. My brother is in LA, and they are experiencing floods. They've never had floods as long as he can remember. And in Australia, I was there so many years, I never heard of it flooding in Melbourne and Sydney. Today, if you live near a river in Sydney, supposed to be a multi-million-dollar house, it is totally flood prone. You've never heard of things like that. So tropical today is hot, humid, and wet. Next. I spent my early years, those were like years of bliss. And this is a picture that I love a lot. It's by Donald Friend of Bali. This is in Sanur, the village of Sanur. And those are the houses that were designed by Jeffrey Bauer. And he did this painting, and it shows a very blissful life. I think those who are from my generation, you come from kampong or small village, and you go to a beach, it's kind of nice. Yeah. So next. I went into Bali from the mid-1990s. We were, during the Mahathir period, there were so many proposals that we did. Then we got hit by the Tong Yam thing from Asian financial crisis in 97. My office got wiped out. So in architecture, you can also be like a .com company or a tech company. You can go up and down. We nearly got wiped out. We had 38 staff. We were reduced down to, at the end of the recession, we were down to 9 staff. But we got a project in Bali, and it wasn't a real project, but it brought me to Bali. And when I ended up in Bali, I learned a lot, and I discovered. And one of the resorts that I really liked there was called Pita Maha, or Magic Light. In the 1930s, some artists from Europe came over, met the Prince of Ubud, and they developed an art movement that is still very strong today. And again, it was architecture and art, finding a way and creating a place that is quite unique. So to me, this is the tropics that I grew up with. Okay, next. I'll share a bit about what I do and what I've done in my architecture journey. Recently, in 2018, we started a book publishing company because we feel that nobody is promoting tropical architecture. And one of the reasons why we went into publishing was Professor Robert Powell, who was then professor at Taylor's University. He came to me and he said that he was very sad because all the big publishing companies in the world don't want to publish tropical architecture because they want to publish Japanese, they want to publish European, etc., etc. So I felt quite sad as a past president of PAM. So I started this, and we have to date published about 8 books. Next. You can buy all these books online. Sorry, no discount, but but you can keep this book for life, okay? And we did one on Chinatown. We did one on bamboo. Next. And then after that, during the COVID period, I went into YouTubing together with a company called Design Seed. I believe that books had a big problem. The postage was very expensive, so I couldn't distribute the book worldwide. So what I did was I went into YouTube, because YouTube, some of these videos have reached more than 1 million views. And at first I thought they were all Malaysian viewers, or Singaporean. 70% are non-Malaysians. And the biggest country that views it are Australia, US, South Africa, and UK. So interestingly, tropical architecture is being promoted. Next. When doors opened again after COVID, I went back to Bali. I don't know why, but it was the first place I went back to. And I went with a writing team. Siksan was with me. And this is Tanjung Sari. If you get a chance, now, Tony Fernandez is now saying now not everyone can fly. And that the price he gave last time was unrealistic. I cannot believe it. Air Asia was always now everyone can fly, right? But the moment the doors opened, I went back to Bali because it had this tropical notion of the idealistic tropical resort and then a beautiful island. And a lot of the architects of my generation, somehow or other, they have a link back to Bali. And this is Tanjung Sari, which is the first resort that ever opened in Bali. Okay, international resort on Sano Beach. And you can see the stone, actually it's not stone, they are coral that is taken out from the beach in front. And they used it to form the gateway and walls. Next. Walter Spee's house. I stayed here. In the past, because it was so expensive, I couldn't stay there. But because they were coming out of a COVID, I managed to stay there at almost a budget rate. And our whole team stayed there. This is Walter Spee's house from the 1920s. And Walter Spees was one of the founders of the Pitamaha movement. Okay, so movements are important. Okay, next. And this is the Oberoi Hotel, the first tropical Balinese hotel. If you ever get a chance to visit this hotel, it's in Seminyak, go and have breakfast or lunch or dinner. Dinner not so good, but you go to this restaurant, it's called Kura Kura, and you will see this courtyard in the middle of the restaurant. To me, it has been, from the day I saw it in the 1990s, this was the first hotel I visited when I first went over to Bali. And I remember this courtyard. And the daylight that comes through the courtyard is amazing. I took this photo myself. It was in the afternoon. But you can see the daylight coming through the thing. So to me, this has always been the perfect courtyard. Interestingly, I measured the courtyard. And in my later, when I was working in China, I measured the huatong, the courtyard of the Chinese houses. It was exactly the same proportion, 6.5 meters, or a module of 6.5. And I thought, if you ever get a chance, okay, go and look at this place and have a meal there and look at how the daylight comes through the building. It's pretty amazing. Next. We went back to visit Amandari. The architect just passed away last month, Peter Mueller from Australia. He did the Oberoi, and then after that, some years later, he did the Amandari. The Amandari is modeled along a village, a Balinese village. And this was the first time a vanishing age pool was used on a paddy field on a hill. And at night, I've been back to this place. Next picture, please. Oh, go back. Yeah, I didn't show the picture, but the rooms are somewhere down here, so you have to walk past the pool. And when you come in at night, sometimes there's a gamelan playing. There's a troupe of gamelan people playing on this. And when you come in, it's pitch black because there are no lights in the hills. And sometimes we are not so sober. So when we come in, we hear gamelan playing and we see this whole pavilion reflected in the water as though it's floating in the sky. And the first time we saw it, we thought we had had a car accident and we died and we were in heaven, you know. So it was that kind of experience when you come through the lobby, walk there and you hear the sound coming and you see this thing floating like on fire because it's got an orange glow around it. And you literally get shivers down your spine. And then you say, wow, this is like a holy place. Okay. So we went back to the Amandari as well. So in some ways, after COVID, it was a time of reflecting and thinking what were the great places and the great tropical architecture that we had seen. And I saw it like 20 years before that. And we went back and we did a whirlwind trip over 7 days. And I had my writing team with me. Next. I'm doing a new book with Robert Powell. And like I said, Pita Maha was a movement. Aki Putra sounds like a good movement, but the women might complain because they might want Aki Putri, right? But there was a period of time, our whole area was called Sunderland. All these countries, if you look at it, were linked together. So I started the talk with a very sensitive frog that came from here. And interestingly, for those of y'all who are, I tell you, architecture is not just about perspectives and 3D and all these things. I learned all this along the way of my architectural journey. Russell Wallace has a name for a line. It's named after him. It's called the Wallace Line. I discovered the Wallace Line in the 1990s when I was swimming off the beach in Nusa Penida. And the Balinese guy told me, and I did not believe him at that time. He told me when the birds in Bali, when it flies towards that line, it turns back and it goes back. It doesn't cross over. And he says that the birds from this side, which is Australasia, do not cross that line. So I said, this guy is good at telling stories, better than an architect. Later, I studied it. And if you look at Wikipedia, I know my talk can be boring. You Google it, you look at the Wallace Line in Wikipedia, it tells the same story. It is an amazing story. It is a story that goes back to the time God created it. And there is a deep chasm here, after which Asia ends and Australasia starts. So you find cockatoos and parakeets on this side, but you don't find them on the other side. You find the Balinese myna and other birds. But this is an interesting thing. And what I'm doing is we are publishing a new book on 5 of the architects that Robert Powell feels should actually be the, in a way, the people that are doing good work in this region. Okay, I think you know Wo Trong Nya, Andra Martin, Rene Tan, Duang Grit. If you want, I'll be bringing them over for a session. If we can, you should try and meet them. Some of them are very hard to meet. Okay, they are all not like me. Mio calls me, I always come. Wo Trong Nya, you call him, you cannot even find him. Okay, and Andra Martin doesn't answer much, but they are all good friends of mine. But they are very hard to get. Okay, next. In 2009, I had a green awakening. Before that, I was a practicing architect, and I always knew what tropical architecture was about. And then after that, I started to understand climate change and the need to go green. Next. So in 2009, we launched Green Building Index for Malaysia. Next. And for the next 10 years, I was designing all green buildings and all green projects. That's my house, S11 house, GBI Platinum. Next. This is Setia HQ, together with Rafiq Azam of Bangladesh. This is the first private sector GBI Platinum building. Next. Setia Convention Center, the first GBI rated convention center. Next. Setia City Mall with Lendlease and Setia, Malaysia's first GBI certified shopping mall. Next. And this is my office. It's not GBI certified, but it's got all the green features that is in my house. It's got solar panels, it's got a huge insulated roof, it's got a green wall behind, and it took it fully recycled an old building, and it totally transforming the neighborhood in that sense. Next. For my efforts, I won the Future Arc I'm actually a jury this year for the Future Art Award. When I first won it, it was the first time. So I didn't think it was going to be a very significant award, but today it is very hard to win. So I'm very lucky I was one of the first two. I won the inaugural one because probably very few submissions those days. Today, as I look at the submissions, they had 88 submissions of incredible buildings by Wu Trong-ya and all these guys. So I look at it, I said, if I put in mine today, I'll never win. So go in early. When you get an opportunity, take it. Next. So I went on to develop more GBI tools. This is for township next. And I did green master plans. This is Satir City next. This is Cyberjaya City Center. All the buildings are connected with bridges. I think in the early days, before GBI came on, it was very hard to get local authority to give you approval to link one building to the next overhead over roads. They'll ask siapa punya tanah ini, what if somebody get robbed or raped on the bridge, whose responsibility? What if the two building disagree, what's going to happen to the bridge? So we had to tackle all these issues. But today in DBKL, MBSA Satir City is compulsory. If you don't provide it, you don't get your building plan approved. So how things have changed over the last 15 years. Next. I also believe a lot that we should promote Malaysian architecture. And in Venice 2010, I exhibited there once. I exhibited the Green Tower. Next. Then 2012, I took part again, and I used aircraft. I think this was way ahead of its time. I think last month you heard about balloons flying over America. For many years after the Hindenburg, nobody looked at balloons again. But balloons are incredible. You know, it's amazing. You can actually float it up there, and it can stay there for months. And it can be used for transportation. So that time, my developers, my clients were asking me to look for land in KL for their development. And I told them there's no more land. So I told them two things. You either buy an aircraft carrier and park it in Port Klang, and you can build 1,000 units of affordable housing, or you get air balloons and you anchor it off Satir City and you put people into it. So that came out of a real project that I was actually telling a story to my clients. Then I developed it for my exhibition. Okay, this model is actually in my private museum. If you want to get your work into the collection of a prestigious museum, you have to start one yourself. Next. So in 2014, I was again in Venice Biennale. Every 2 years is architecture, the next year is art. So in 2014, I was the head of delegation. And this time I exhibited something called Tea Colony. Again, this is derived from my architectural work. I was doing a project in Sandakan, and we were doing next door to us, they wanted to do one prima affordable housing. So the government gave us the land to do, but the land was all mud. And when I did the piling test, the pile was, you know, the building is like 25 stories. It's tall. The piles were 40 stories down. And they had so many piles because every column needed 2 or 3 piles. So I was thinking, for one of a better word, I said, bloody hell. I said the work below the ground was taller than the building above by almost half, you know. So I said, this is ridiculous. Then I look back at the theory. What if the building only had one leg? If it only had one foundation and you put 10 piles around it, it will, you know, you can actually reduce the piles. So then I look at how to stabilize a building with one leg and one foundation. And I look at the stool. You know, a 4-legged stool is called bad design. A stool only needs 3 legs because it's a triangulation and it stabilizes itself. So I realized that when you take one mushroom or one tree canopy, you got to put it with 2 others and it stabilizes itself. Now you go DBKL areas, you find trees fall down because there are no trees around it. But when there's a grouping of trees, it can withstand the winds, okay? So I exhibited this, and again, this model is in Ermu Museum. Next. And In 2017, PAM organized a competition for University Malaya, and the brief was the university had to continue to function, but they needed to add a lot of space. So I used what I did in 2014, and I implemented it here as a theory. So we came in the winner together with Ken Young. There were two winners, and we used this right through the whole campus. And I proposed that they could contact the alumni, and if the alumni can sponsor one canopy with spaces underneath hanging above the air, then if they can sponsor like $1 million, then we keep adding canopy after canopy after canopy with no disruption on the ground. And one of the people asked me, is this buildable? So I was under pressure. Next. And then MBPJ, I never got any government jobs in my life. This was the only job I did voluntarily, because I was asked by the chief planner that they needed to do something for PJ Kita. I volunteered my services, but when they brought it and presented it to the council said, no, we thank Dr. Tan, but everyone must be paid. They don't want free job. So that's the only time I ever got a government job. After I got a government job, I realized why I don't want a government job. So tedious. Anyway, so I did a tea colony. Next. So what I did was, remember what I did for Venice Biennale, what I exhibited, and putting three together. I got an engineer involved, and we did the stress and the studies, and we coupled them together. Next. And this is what we have. The whole ground floor is kept empty. It goes up to a roof. They are linked up, and everything is suspended. Even the disabled ramp is suspended from the top. So when you go into a jungle in an established forest, you find the plants actually start to come from the top down. Okay, next. That's the plan. So that's the building there. This is the PJ swimming pool. And they asked us to do something for the street art. And we work with the local community to paint the street art. Pamela Tan, some of you know her. She's also a recent graduate. She was with me at the time. And she helped me to organize the street art. So that's just the simple plan of a tea colony. Next. That's the section and plans. Next. That's me. A bit of a brutalist building. It's off form concrete. Next. And the street art that we did with the local community with Pamela Tan. Next. And this is where the flea market is supposed to be. And you can see the center is there. Next. 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 Maybe go back one. Yeah. So you can see this is the example, a tree, and going upstairs to be under the tree, and everything else hanging down from the tree. So nothing actually touches the ground. Next. These are the ramps. Next. 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 Okay, a simple project, and I did it. I didn't even know whether it would work, but as architects, you sort of know that it works, but nobody has done it before. And because that guy from University Malaya, after I won the competition, he asked me, can it be done? So I never forgot that question, and I always felt that when I get a project, I will build one. Okay, so this has been completed. Submitted it for PAM Awards. Let's see what happens. And I'm also building my new house like that. So I just want to live in it and see how it works. So I'm actually currently going for building plan approval for a new house that I'm building, which later on I'll convert into a sculpture museum, because architecture is sculpture. Next. This is a very small house that I just completed. It's an architecture lecture, so I'll bore you with some of my projects. And I still have like half an hour, so it should be okay. This is an interesting house. It's in Damansara Heights. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, thanks. This is an interesting house because in your architectural journey, you will see a lot of houses that sometimes you want to buy. So I actually was eyeing this house, and I was negotiating to buy it. And but the price was still a bit high, and I thought I will get it at my price. So I was negotiating over quite a few months. And suddenly one evening, and my wife really wanted to buy the house. And one evening, my client texted me, with the same house information, and she asked me, "Is this a good house?" I thought, oh my God. So I went to see my wife, and she was sleeping. And I said, guess what? This so-and-so just texted me, asked me, is this a good house to buy? She was very angry, She said, don't tell her it's a lousy house. I went back out there. I watched a bit of John Wick on TV. Then I had to tell her the truth because I'm an architect. I said, it's a good house to buy. Next week, she didn't even bargain with them. She paid them the price. And she said, I want you to be my architect. And I said, it's a four-letter word. So after that, I had to tell my wife. Till today, my wife is very upset. Okay, so I actually designed this house in my mind and in my office already, because I thought it was mine. So when I got the job, I could do the design very fast because it was already done. Okay, so the house is set back very far, and as architects, whenever you see a house that's set back very far, what it means is you can almost add another house in front. Okay, so in architecture, some people complain to me, "Doc, you pay me peanuts. How am I going to be rich?" Then I tell them, you should go around, look at houses, and because you're in the building industry, all of us made our money from investments. The salary is to keep you honest and humble. Okay, because it gives you a regular job, it gives you a chance to meet people. Like I do architecture, that's why I meet great people like you, right? And Mio, etc., Doc. And it gives you a chance to meet people along the way. But you must learn to invest. So anyway, so I had to do the architecture. Next. That's the courtyard. Next. So this was the sketch I did when I initially looked at the land. The original house was up to here. And you look at the setback from the front, it was huge. So in my when she bought the land, her house, she didn't have a budget to build what I intended initially. I had a master bedroom on top here on steel, and it was looking into a pool. So those are in the future phases. But it had a retaining wall on the whole side here and a fencing here. So I wanted to take all the windows out so that the house doesn't have windows. It just looks into the garden. And I was prepared not to even have glass because I can live in the tropics, but this family couldn't. They were very afraid of security. They wanted glass because they wanted aircon it. But the way I originally planned it, the garden was part of the house, and the retaining wall on this side was the wall of the house. And in front, I just put an intervention, and there will be a pool at the front, okay, in this courtyard here. There's a lovely Japanese pine tree, which that pine tree, I did a job before for a Japanese client, and they wanted to buy a tree like 1/3 that size, and the price was like 100,000. So I knew the value of the tree. So in architecture, you must learn all these things, because don't simply chop down a tree. The tree is actually worth $1 million. Okay, so next. So I did a front extension, which is just to create this courtyard in the front. That's the retaining wall at the back. That's the landscape. It wasn't supposed to have glass. It was supposed to look right through. And the flooring material of the inside was supposed to come right out. Okay, so this is the section and so on. Next. And that's the intervention that I did to the front. And that's from this courtyard. I put a wall there to, later on, when they can afford it, there'll be a pool inside here. And I kept the Japanese pine tree. That's $1 million tree. And I use off-form brickwork. They are all infill and steel work to just do the slight intervention. These are the car park areas. And because they were very concerned about security, so I make it look like a prison. So nobody will steal anything, because they will really end up in prison. Okay, next. Next, yeah. So that's the detail of the inside looking out. The car porch is there. This is the metal deck. Everything that's sticking out is perforated, like, so that when you look up, it's like you're looking at the sunlight through the leaves. Next. Okay, this was the retaining wall at the side. It was supposed to spread all the way out. And this is on the other side. Okay, so that's the retaining wall. It had lovely ferns on it. No landscape architect could have done better. It was all natural. Next. So that's the interiors. I tend to do this quite often now when I do lighting for my staircase. I just put, because LED has changed lighting technology incredibly. You can just use a linear one and it creates this perspective that is, if you look at, you can't really see it, but it mirrors into this again and again and again and again. Okay, next. So that's the courtyard at night and the Japanese pine tree. Next. 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 Okay, this is a small interior job, house number 100. Next is in the mansions. And again, I have clients who trust me to do whatever I want. And I'm quite privileged to have clients like that. So they told me, Doc, I give you the budget, you just do what you want. So in this whole thing, I created a library for them because living room was double volume and it was just plain white and painted, and some people just put marble over it, but it looks like a crematorium. So I wanted something warm, so I did a book. I did almost like bookshelves with lighting from behind. And I did a sculptural staircase that goes up 4 stories. Next. That's the plan. Next. So that's the library that I saw created. So when you come in, you get this really warm amber glow. Next. Next. And I did this staircase. I usually do my staircase suspended from the early days because engineers in Malaysia tend to over-design the beams by almost 25%. So you can easily hang a staircase on it. So steel is very strong in tension. So steel, nobody, even Hercules, cannot pull a strand of steel and break it. Not like a rubber band. Steel has strong tensile qualities. So all my staircases, 4 stories of it hangs from the top down. And at the bottom, I've got a pin that keeps it from moving. This is the first time I use a white staircase because the whole place is about the staircase. Next. So you see the staircase coming down into the lower levels. Next. The white staircase. Next. 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 I use a lot of mirrors. Next. And that's the staircase from the lowest ground going up. Okay. Next. And that's when you enter, that's the glow. After I finished it, they told me none of them read books. So I said, what? You didn't tell me that? So now they have all their whiskey bottles there. So they never told me once that none of them read books, Shame on them anyway, they should read some books. So I did all these nice bookshelves, and now it's all got whiskey and brandy bottles in it. Okay. Life is funny, okay, but the good thing is they still like it and they still built it. Okay, next. This is a new house that I just completed. I've been using a double screen for quite a long time from the time I did my office. So this one I've tried because opposite got some greenery, and this time I've used a mirror reflective screen so that you can actually see across, and at certain times of day you actually see the sky, so it actually disappears. Next. Next. It's an interesting house. This is the second house I'm doing for this client. It's a very famous skin specialist. I think some of you all go and see him. And I spent a lot of time looking at land for him. And he found a perfect piece of land. It's got an entrance from the bottom and an entrance from the top. Both are roads, okay? And the first time I built their house was a tropical villa in Damansara Heights. And I called it the Pavilion House. And it was 3 pavilions around an internal swimming pool. But the family had grown. The time the kids were just born. And this is a second return client. And this time is for the family and 3 adult kids. But one of them was overseas at the time, so they wanted to have the option for the children to live in the lower house and for them to live in the upper house. So this is actually 2 houses in one with a central core. In most houses that you find on slopes, you find that the setback line, you find an incredible Batu Cave staircase on both sides because it is sloping, and because of the setback line, people put the staircases there. And the staircase, number one, is very hard to use. Number two, it's very hard to maintain. So often you find weeds growing out of it. So I purposely didn't want that. So I put a planter on the two sides, and I took the staircase into the middle of the house. So you can actually walk from top to bottom through an internal, it's like you come to a pyramid, you know, Tutankhamun, and then you actually walk into the heart of the building. So rather than for the celebrated super staircase to be on the both sides and never celebrated, I actually put the staircase right into the middle house. So there's a staircase that winds itself all the way through here, and there's an upper level pool here and a lower level pool for the children as well. Next. These are some of the finishes. Next. Some detailing. Next. Oh, maybe go back one. So instead of having a staircase, which most people have at the side going up and down for maintenance, now it's just a series of gardens. Next. This is the internal staircase that goes from the bottom to the top. I purposely did the wall in such a way that it's not boring. I actually staggered the walls. Next. 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 Okay, that's the ground level for the upper unit, and there's a pool there. Next. So that's the house. So you find that this is actually one house, and at the point there is actually another house. Yeah, next. Next. So along the way, I remember I told you about Pita Maha, that the tropics is not just about climate, it's also about the artistry of plants and water around you. And that's why the Pita Maha resort that is located along the Ayong River is so magical. Okay, so I believe that, you know, this is a good friend of mine. In last year, after we went to Bali, we also went to Art Jakarta, and some of us are art collectors. And this is Steve Wong. He's a very well-known Malaysian art collector. We went into this gallery, and this incredible painting in front of us. And when you